You can be seated. Thank you all for attending Kayson West Oral today. We appreciate you being here. Joining me on the panel is Ms. Brandy Westfall and Mr. Jeff Patterson. I'm excited about the oral, about the work Kayson's been putting into it, and so I hope you all enjoy it. Let's pray. Father, thank you for Kayson. Thank you for the heart he's put behind his oral and the work that he's put in. Father, I pray that you calm his nerves and help him to speak clearly and slowly, and that your word is heard through him, Father. I pray for the discussion, that it glorifies you and edifies Kayson. Pray all this in your name. Amen.
As a high school senior, I have had the privilege of being influenced by many different people, some out of love and genuine care, and some for their own gain. We can all recall someone who's left a lasting impression on our lives. It might be a family member, like a parent, or an authority figure, like a boss, teacher, counselor, or coach. Mentorship is a constant part of life, offering both opportunities to mentor and to be mentored. Mentorship is the process of a mentor shaping and guiding a mentee. One way we analyze different approaches to mentorship is through the tree of mentorship. At its base, it's split between intentional and unintentional, then divided into effective and ineffective, and then further branches out between godly and ungodly influences. This framework helps us to understand the different ways that mentorship takes place and the impact it has on others. Mentorship occurs in many different contexts, and different people can serve as mentors in different ways. Whether we realize it or not, we are all serving as influences to everyone else. The question is, what kind of mentor do we choose to be? In the book, A Game Plan for Life, Coach John Wooden talks a lot about being the best you can be. This aligns with the teachings of the Bible as well. Whatever you do, do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve. Colossians 3:23 and 24. Coach Wooden spoke very little to glorify being the best in terms of the most skilled, but he did write a lot about being the best player, man, or coach you can possibly be. Following these ideals, we should become the best mentors that we can. But how do you become the best mentor possible? We first have to identify what makes a good mentor. Through this work, I plan to find the traits that characterize the best mentors and how to develop and act out those qualities. And using a strategy that was taught to me in geometry, reductio ad absurdum, I'm going to find how to be the best mentor possible. Reductio ad absurdum is a method of finding truth or proving something by showing that all other solutions are absurd or contradictory. To be the best mentor, is it better to be intentional, to know when you're in a mentorship opportunity and act on that? Or is it better to be unintentional and allow people to look up to your works alone? The University of Cambridge defines intention as something you want and plan to do. An unintentional mentor can be very effective. Someone can be intentional in one way, yet unintentional in other ways. For about 3 years, when I was 11 to 14, I played for a travel baseball club named Ignite. Every year, we would start practice in November and play tournaments all the way into August. We had a coach named Josh Turley, a left-handed pitcher from the Detroit Tigers organization. Josh was a very intentional and effective baseball coach, but the most important thing I learned was not a baseball lesson. The most important thing he did was end his baseball career in order to come home and spend time with his wife and young daughter. He had been up and down in the minor leagues for a few years and probably would have made the majors had he stayed just a little bit longer. But he taught me that the end of baseball is not the end of life. I didn't recognize this lesson until fairly recently, now that I'm seeing such a large part of my life possibly ending. But now I look back and see something that was completely unintentional on his part. He had no reason to retire, because in 7 years I was going to look back and learn from that. But his unintentional mentorship left a lasting impression on my life. I've also had an influence in the past who was in a mentorship position but was not intentional about how they were acting and left a negative impact by not acting according to their position of authority. Their mistakes would never have happened if they had recognized the influence they had and the mentorship role they were in. Unintentional mentorships are not inherently bad or negative. However, they do leave much more room for a negative influence to be left. Intentionality, although not necessary for an effective or even godly mentorship, is necessary for the best possible mentorship. 2 Corinthians 10 discusses the topic of being intentional with our actions. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So why would we let the opportunity to mentor not be intentional and carefully planned? In order to be intentional, we need to be mindful and searching for opportunities to mentor. If we fail to recognize and purposefully engage in mentorship opportunities, we will fail to be the best possible mentors we can be. Using the Cambridge definition from earlier, an intentional mentor is someone who recognizes when they are a mentor, has a goal for their people to reach, and a plan to reach that goal. Another characteristic that defines a mentor is whether they are effective or not. A mentor is effective if the mentee does what the mentor is trying to lead them to. But if the mentorship is unintentional, there is no measure of effectiveness. If the mentorship is unintentional and there is no measure of effectiveness, it can be derived from if the mentee achieves or learns what they set out to. But if the relationship is unintentional on both sides, there is no measure of effectiveness. If given the choice between effective and ineffective, the optimal choice is obviously effective. However, ineffective mentorships can still bear godly fruits. For example, an abusive person can be trying to instill fear and hatred into someone, but it may backfire and the abused person may figure out how terrible hatred really is. That would be ineffective because the intentions were for bad, but the outcome was still for good. This is reflected in Romans chapter 8 when he writes, "And we know that God causes all things to work together for the good of those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." To be effective, you need to understand your subject matter. You wouldn't take guitar lessons from someone that doesn't know anything about music, nor would you take driver's ed from a 5-year-old or Gabe. This year, the MCA baseball team finished the season at second place in district with an 8-2 record. Most of the team hit, pitched, and fielded better than we had before. We achieved this thanks to a lot of help from Coach Watson. You could search some of the best and largest baseball organizations in the world and fail to find a man with as much knowledge about the game as Coach Watson. If you have a few hours to burn, feel free to ask him about Nolan, the dynamic warm-up, or why you need functional strength in 3 hand positions. It's also important that you care and show your players or mentees that you really are in the trenches with them. During basketball practices throughout my high school career, coaches Wally, Rob, Tyler, and Harris would often lace up and try to play with us. Whether this was really them trying to make us better or just them trying to show us that they were good before they got old and their knees stopped working, I'm not sure. However, it did help us improve because they weren't afraid to put in a little bit of work to help us. For a more serious example, I interviewed my mom's high school basketball coach, guard on the 1993 national champion Lady Raiders basketball team, and current head coach of the Texas Tech University Lady Raiders, Krista Gerlich. I asked her what player she believed she had the biggest impact on or off the court, and she told me about a player named Rebecca Van Dyke. During Rebecca's junior year at the University of Texas in Arlington, she had to deal with the passing of her father. Coach Gerlich told me that their close relationship grew even closer through the following years, and Rebecca grew a lot on the court and as a player, and as a person. One last thing you need to do is ensure that you are getting the desired result from the mentee. Accountability is crucial for effectiveness. The final decision that needs to be made is between godly and ungodly mentorships. But what defines a godly mentor? As children of God, everything we do should be to bring glory to Him, and that should be reflected in the way we mentor. A godly mentor is someone who, through their influence, seeks to instill godly qualities in others. Ungodly mentorships are not necessarily malicious, they are just not godly. However, beneficial things can still arise from ungodly mentorships. Some of the best athletes in the world are coached in ungodly mentorships, and that doesn't hinder their growth as an athlete. For example, in Japan, some young baseball players are coached with extreme training techniques and forced to play through excruciating pain and sometimes injury. These training styles have seen impressive success throughout the recent years. Japan has won 11 Little League World Series, 5 of them in the last 15 years. They've also won 3 World Baseball Classics. There have only been 5 of the tournaments ever held. The best player in the world, Shohei Ohtani, recently signed a contract for $700 million over the next 10 years. This nearly doubled the next highest contract from any MLB player. Also, 2 out of the 10 highest paid players in the MLB are Japanese-born. Although these are all examples of extremely effective coaching, if they're not godly mentorships, then it's all in vain. If not done for the Lord, David claims, "When I considered all that I had accomplished and what I had labored to achieve, I found everything to be futile and a pursuit of the wind. There is There is nothing to be gained under the sun. Ecclesiastes 2:11. Also, Solomon said that, not David. God is the greatest and absolute good, and if we are striving to be the best mentor that we can possibly be, it must be a godly mentorship. But how do we become a godly mentor? The first thing you need to do is ensure that you are being both a godly person while you're mentoring and when you're not. Paul discusses this in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Be imitators of me, just as I also am of Christ. We discussed something similar in social dances last semester. When you're dancing with a partner, that person is following you, so you need to ensure that you are worthy of being followed. Now, I'm not quite as good a dancer as Mr. Bowden, but by learning from him, I have become much more worthy of being followed than I was before, and I've only dropped Sophie once. When we engage in a mentorship, we should ensure that we are worthy of being imitated. If not, a godly mentorship cannot be achieved. The last thing that a mentee needs is to put their trust in you and then get dropped. The second thing you need to do is observe the fruits of your mentee. If we've already established an effective mentorship, then a godly mentor's teachings will produce godly fruits. To summarize, to be the best mentors we can be, we need to identify mentorship opportunities, set clear goals, and develop actionable plans. We must understand our subject matter, engage actively with our mentees, and evaluate their progress. Ultimately, we must embody godly principles ourselves and share that knowledge and love with our mentees, fostering an environment where the fruits of the Spirit can flourish in their actions. If you aspire to be the best mentor possible, this is the path you should follow. Thank you.
You did it. Well done. Very good. So we'll warm up a little bit. I know as a baseball player, you greatly appreciate and value a good long warm up.
Yes.
So we'll see what I can do. Well, we'll start with this. What are your plans after graduation?
Probably go home, chill, you know.
Can you elaborate?
Yes, I plan to attend Texas Tech University and study kinesiology.
Another kinesiology, I like it. And then kind of along that same note, you mentioned your coach, Josh, for the Ignite.
Yes, sir.
And one thing that you said you learned was life after baseball, right? He didn't necessarily... The most important lesson he taught you wasn't about baseball, but it was about the importance of life after baseball. And so I guess this leads into this. What does life after baseball look like for you?
Honestly, I'm not quite sure. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I think it involves, obviously, my relationship with the Lord, right? Because my life is not centered around baseball, or it shouldn't be. And so as long as I have my identity in that, I'm just going to keep walking the walk.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing to keep in mind is that these things that we put great importance on, we have to be careful not to put those in a higher rank than our relationship with God and relationship with others. And so I think that's an important lesson to learn as a 11 through 14-year-old, but also important to keep in mind as an 18-year-old going into adulthood. Yeah, that's good. What is something here at MCA, as you're leaving, what is something that you want to be remembered for?
I don't know that I really care to be remembered, but maybe I do care to leave a trail of people who have been maybe impacted by just me being kind, or like maybe the way I treated someone can impact the way they treat people in the future. But I wouldn't say I'm really worried about being remembered.
That's a good answer, actually. I think that's a good mindset to have. Is the legacy doesn't have to have our name on it necessarily. I like that. That's good. Getting into the subject of mentoring. Is there anyone that you are actively mentoring right now?
There's definitely no one that we've defined the relationship with. I think we're always actively mentoring the people around us, right? The people that you spend every day with. I'd say that, like, my younger brother Brecken, I serve I serve as a mentor to him, but he also serves as that for me. So maybe I think mentorship is really mainly defined by the time we spend with each other and the influence that they have on us. So mentorship can be a two-way street, and I think I have that with a lot of my friends and my siblings, and then some of the younger students.
Okay, and I think Mr. Patterson will kind of expand on this a little later. So are you equating mentorship with influence, or is there a difference there?
I think it has to do with influence, but I don't think having influence on people is necessarily a mentorship, if that makes sense. I think mentorship can be equated down to, I don't know what that word means, I don't know why I used it, as like influence over time. I think that'd be the simplest way that I could put it.
Okay. So you have maybe mentorship is a species of influence, maybe under the umbrella of influence, and just a more focused type of influence, maybe?
I think you could say that.
Okay. Then going on the other side, what older students have mentored you? And then what category of the mentor tree would you put them in? So let's do a couple if you can. If you have time.
First, I think Thaden, even though he's also my brother, but he was an older student, I think he's definitely mentored to me in kind of all aspects of life, just by being an example that's been in front of me, like, all the time. I mean, 2 years I sat where he's sitting and watched him talk about the role of competition as Christians. But I think that I would definitely put that as an effective godly mentorship, maybe unintentional. But it was intentional on my part, but I don't know what exactly he was thinking as a...
Okay, so that's an interesting aspect. The intentionality was on the part of the mentee, but not necessarily on the part of the mentor. We'd have to ask him, I guess. We won't. But, okay, so that's a good differentiation of intentionality could go both ways, right? That's good. I'm going to save some of these for later. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you.
Okay. All right, good job. Okay, in your paper, you sought out to prove your case for mentorship using what geometry principle?
Reductio ad absurdum.
So I found that really interesting when I was reading through this for the first time. Why? Because you don't see that in a lot of papers, right? And you don't see this in a lot of the theses. Why did you choose a geometry principle?
I don't know that I was consciously thinking about it while I was deciding how I was going to break down the paper. But then I kind of, towards the end, I looked back and realized kind of what I had done. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that looks like reductio ad absurdum. I need another school reference.
There you go. Check.
But,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, I was also not familiar at all with the mentorship tree. I attempted to write it out on my paper. I don't know if I got it right, but I was wondering, since you mentioned that in a sense you're a mentor to Brecken, so I was wondering if you could use the mentorship tree to categorize your style of mentorship with him.
I think it's. I'm trying to be the best.
You can see my tree if you need to.
I'm trying to be the best mentor I can possibly be to him, right? And so what that looks like is intentional on my part, right? And I can't decide whether he chooses to look at me and say, I'm going to follow exactly what he's doing, right? Or I'm going to learn from everything that he's doing. But I'm intentionally trying to be someone that he can follow and look up to, whether he does or not, or whether I execute that perfectly every time. I'd like to say it's effective, because most people like him more than they like me. So, and definitely a godly mentorship.
Okay. Okay. Later on in your paper, you talk about, your quote here says, so why would we let the opportunity to mentor not be intentional and carefully planned? So I wanted to ask you, why do you think we don't? Like, why are we not more intentional, and why do we let these opportunities pass?
I think we fail to recognize the mentorship opportunities that we have a lot and how many that there really are.
Okay.
And then I think also people just don't really think about mentoring to people. Like, they don't think about like every chance, and myself included, but every chance I have to influence someone in a positive way, do I use that? And I think it's just a lack of recognition of the reality of the situation.
I think there's some truth there. Okay, I was also thinking about your interview that you did with the Texas Tech women's basketball coach. What was the most unexpected or surprising thing that you learned in that interview?
I don't know that it should have been maybe an unexpected answer. Well, but I asked her who had the largest influence on her, and she told me about her dad and the way he had coached her, like all the way, basically her entire basketball career. And then she told me about how she had, her daughter had played for her in high school, and then she went to coach at UT Arlington, and her daughter followed her. And she just kind of told me about how, like, she was very happy that she was able to she was trying to mirror the way that her dad had mentored her and the way she mentored her daughter. And so I think, like, we often think of, like, our parents are probably the largest influence in our life just because they get to basically control, like, the first things that you're thinking. But, like, the mentorship of, like, both of them, maybe like their family tree, following them all the way up, I thought was really interesting, and how intentional they were.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, you mentioned really briefly in your paper, you mentioned accountability. You said that we need to ensure that to get the desired results, we need to ensure that our mentees are acting Christ-like. And you said accountability is crucial for effectiveness. Why is accountability so important?
I think we're not perfect. I mean, nobody is.
Right.
And if you're left off by yourself, it's really difficult to keep yourself accountable. And so accountability can look at you can keep yourself accountable as well if you're able to do that well. Mm-hmm. But maybe having, like, people that are observing your life and saying, like, this is right, like, you're doing this well, because obviously we're going to stray off. You know, we're aiming for something that we can kind of see. We know where we're going, but we don't know what our perfect path is. Mm-hmm. And, like, if someone's next to me, I can help them along their way. And so it's just like we're all kind of straying off, mm-hmm. and then maybe helping each other stay on track.
I think there's some good truth there. You also mentioned that to be the best mentors that we can be, we need to identify mentorship opportunities, set clear goals, and develop actionable plans. Well, and actually before that, I just highlighted the wrong part. You talked about the fruits of your mentee, that we need to observe the fruits of your mentee. And so I was wondering, as a mentor, is that always the best judge of how effective your mentorship has been, the fruits of your mentee? Like, can you rely on that? So
that was in the towards the end of the paper when I was talking about godly and ungodly mentorships. Mm-hmm. And I think in terms of effectiveness, whether if we've established that, like, this mentorship is effective, then if it really is a godly mentorship and you're doing your job as a godly mentor, then you will get godly fruits.
Okay.
Now, if it's if they're not bearing fruits, then either you're not being a godly mentor or it's not effective. Okay.
So maybe you're doing your part, but maybe it's just not effectively affecting them.
Possibly.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to pass it on. But I asked you when we were in the back, which was more nerve-wracking to prepare for, a senior thesis or like a playoff game for baseball. And so at the time I think you said they were about the same, that there was a lot of similarities. So now we're like 2/3 of the way done with this, maybe. So do you have the same opinion or a different opinion?
Definitely a senior thesis. Because I was nervous while I was talking, and during baseball games, I'm never nervous, like, while I'm actually doing something. There was a point, I'm sure everyone noticed it, where I stood up there and I looked at Gabe, and he was just looking at me, giving my speech, and I just started laughing. And there was no joke. That was not planned. I just started laughing.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
All right, Kayson, great job. So I have a few questions for you. You really made me think as I was reading through your paper, because when I read your title and it says how to be the best mentor, my mind went straight to those Facebook official relationship defined mentor relationships. Not just like I was mentioning to Mr. Bowden earlier today, I've never heard the phrase unintentional mentor. To me, that I've always thought that that's just, well, I had somebody who influenced my life or was a good example for me. Is there a difference between being a good example or an influence or a mentor, or are they all the same?
I think that there is a difference, definitely. A mentor can be like maybe all three, right? You can be a good influence and be a mentor. I don't think they necessarily like oppose each other in any way. So you can have someone that's a good influence but not a mentor, and you can have someone that's a good influence and is a mentor, and you can have a mentor that's someone that, I think for it to be a mentor, they have to have influence on you. So I think that's really what defines it, is like I said earlier, a mentor is someone who has influence on you over like a certain time period.
Sure. So do you think everyone should have a mentor that they have sought out that's like a distinct, defined mentor that they go to for counsel and advice?
I wouldn't say that everyone necessarily needs that. I think we all need people that we are maybe being mentored by. But I can look, what's it called? I can open up a Bible and be mentored by Paul, because he's being intentional writing these letters to the churches and trying to mentor to them. Maybe he's not being intentional to me, but I've spent 18 years of my life reading the Bible, and so I think someone that's really influenced me is like Paul and the people that wrote those, or maybe someone who should be the biggest mentor or influence in all of our life, which is Jesus. And so I think that whenever you have a certain amount of time, like with something to break it down, they can be a mentor to you, whether it's even like a physical connection.
That's great, because that was actually one of the things that Mr. Bowden brought into our conversation when we were talking about this, was maybe we've read authors who are not alive and we didn't have the opportunity to visit. So for you to make that connection is awesome. That was perfect. What would keep somebody from seeking out a definite mentor? Like what would stop somebody from taking that step?
From someone, are you saying like going up to someone and asking them like, will you be my mentor?
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know that it's even a necessary thing to have someone that you're like, you are my mentor, and we're going to have a defined relationship and post each other on Instagram. It's like, I would say that Mr. Bowden has been a mentor to me throughout the year, and I think I'm his senior assistant, and he's my tutor, but it's not like, hey, I'm your mentor, even though it has been like a mentorship relationship. And so I think that almost everyone is in those situations where they have a mentor, even if it's not like defined in that way. Does that make sense?
Sure. The reason I bring it up is early in my career, Coach Rob told me if I kept talking about band things, he was going to hurt me. But I got to bring it up anyway. Sorry, Coach. Early in my career, I had my high school band director was one of the biggest influences in my life, and he lived in the same town. Was kind of he was a fine arts coordinator, kind of a boss. Your grandpa knows him, knows exactly what I'm talking about. But I was afraid to go talk to him and have him be a mentor and like give me advice. Should I have reached out and said, hey, can you walk alongside me and guide me and learn from you, or is that not that big a deal?
I mean, I think, obviously, I'm not as old as you, so I wasn't there,
Sure.
you know. But in the 50, 60, 70 or so years since that happened, I think that...
You're close. We haven't graded your project yet, you know.
That's all right. I mean, I think I can look back and say that I think it probably would have been beneficial for you, because he was probably in a position, oh my gosh, where he knows he's a teacher, right? And maybe he's not looking and saying, like, how can I mentor to these kids and have, like, an effect, like, all of their lives deeply, you know? And so maybe it's somewhere or something where he's not being intentional about his actions and letting y'all know that y'all can come up to him in that way and that he wants to be a mentor to y'all.
Is there a benefit to doing something like that, to seeking somebody out to be your mentor? Like,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that there is.
Elaborate.
If they're like, I think it ensures that it's intentional on both sides. And so a lot about being the best mentor includes like knowing that you're in this spot and being very intentional with your actions and seeing like if you're being effective or not, saying, am I being a godly influence to them? And I think that if you go up to someone and y'all discuss it and you enter into this relationship where you're knowingly being mentored and he's knowingly like a mentor to you, then I think it helps everyone to just know where they are, right? And it's going to help them to be intentional towards you.
Okay, so like what kind of qualities or character traits, I mean, like let's say I'm going to go seek out a mentor for something in my life, whether it's in my career or just, you know, maybe I just need some life help. What kind of qualities and characteristics would you search for in a mentor if you're going to be intentional, your word, to find that mentor?
So I think you need to look for someone that's that understands their subject matter, whatever you're looking for them in. Like you said, whether it's like a job or whatever it is, someone that understands their field enough to teach it or mentor it to you. Then I think you need to be looking for someone who like cares about what they're doing and is going to care about you as their mentee, right? Enough to really like go to work with you and be the term you hear a lot is like in the trenches, but to really like entrench themselves with your success and who you are so much that like it's very important to them that you succeed and that you achieve what you've set out to. And then ultimately I think it should be someone that's a godly influence on your life, because that is the greatest, and that's really the only thing that matters in the end.
Right. Later in your paper you said that you needed to live a life that was worthy of being imitated, worthy of being followed. So would it stand to reason that you're the person you seek out should be living a life that's worthy of being imitated as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Do you have anybody specifically like in your life that you go to and that mentors you?
Not in the way that we've been talking about like that, but I definitely have people that are mentors to me, whether it's like my dad or Mr. Bowden or you and Coach Watson, Coach Rob and Wally and Coach Tyler. I think are all people who have like been mentors to me. Whether, I mean, y'all know, I mean, y'all are my coaches and y'all are my teachers and my parents. But whether you recognize like I'm his mentor, I think there's been some very effective or very
Sure.
beneficial fruits to come out of that.
Sure. Well, like I said, when I started my time, you've made me really think about this, because when I first read your paper, I was like, those are different things. But after reading it and listening to you speak and talk about it, I think that there is a little bit of an overlap in there, that it's not black and white. So I think that's good. It made me really have to kind of think about what I thought about what you did. So you did a great job. Proud of you.
Thank you.
What are some classical examples of a good mentoring relationship?
Classical, you mean like from a book?
Sure.
Oh. I think that, like I talked about earlier, Mr. Patterson just so elegantly pointed to, someone we can look at is like Solomon in Ecclesiastes, and how he talks about like the things of this world not being fulfilling. I think that's one of the most important things that we can learn. So probably him.
So who would have mentored Solomon then?
I think a lot of his influence would have come from, obviously God, right? And so I think if we follow everything back to its root, like what should cover all of our mentorship should be God and a godly influence.
Okay, let's go for a different relationship. Let's say, a classic example of, I don't want to name any, but of the older teaching the younger intentionally, and the younger intentionally learning from the older.
Oh, you mean like a mentorship relationship that we've seen in a book? Probably, to go back to the Bible again, like Jesus to all of his disciples. I think that's a mentorship relationship. Or Paul to Timothy.
Yep. Yeah, that's where my mind went to as well. Kind of going along with the classic examples, historically, the idea of mentorship was very prevalent in all of culture. If we go back to the time of Jesus and all that, in that culture, you either found a rabbi to follow or you found an expert to apprentice with. Right, that was your two choices. Either you followed the rabbi and went that route, or you found some sort of vocation and were apprenticing underneath someone else. And even later on in history, all the way up till fairly recent history, that was a big part of the culture. Was you found somebody, you apprentice under them, and you learn from a master. Why do you think these days that is so rare? What is it about us today that makes that something that's rare to see?
I think a lot of it has to do with like the ease of finding information, and people go to college now, so they don't go and mentor, or they don't go and be an apprentice to like a blacksmith or somebody. Trade schools, something like that. We've replaced a lot of those mentorships with the internet or with school, and that's not inherently bad, but I think that there are some things that those fail to teach us. They're not personal.
Okay, besides not being personal, what other things, what other failings might there be with being apprenticed to YouTube?
I think that a lot of what it says maybe lies too, and a lot of the internet and a lot of colleges are very secular, right? They're not connected with God, and that is really what all of it's about. And so I think having influences that can teach us or mentor to us in like a sport or for our job or just to be our teachers, I think it's very beneficial to have them as like a godly mentorship, someone that you can look up to in multiple ways.
Yeah, that's good. Going back to the book, I really enjoyed reading this book, and I'm glad that you picked it up to read. So what are some of the takeaways for you from Wooden's book?
I appreciated a lot of it from, aside from like a strictly mentorship perspective.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
But the way he talked about how he ran practices, and the way he talked about his like old coaches, and how he didn't care as much for. He seemed to be worried about the important things more. So, not really there wasn't much media then. He's pretty old, but nothing like flashy. He wanted to do like everything perfect, and that's why they won so many games.
Do you remember the example he gave of kind of the first practice of every year, what he would do with his team?
He would sit them down and have them put on their socks and then put on their shoes, and he would teach them how to tie their shoes.
Yeah, he'd tell everybody, take your socks off, take your shoes off, and he'd basically tell them, this is how you put your socks on. And he gave them detailed instructions how to put their socks on. And everybody's kind of looking around, and he gave them reasons why it was important that you did it this way, right? So yeah, like you were saying, it was attention to detail, the small things. How you start really affects how you finish. So that's good. One last question, and then I'm going to pass it off to you. What has been your most memorable and or formative class at MCA? You can have one for each if you want.
Oh, is that what we're doing?
It's up to you. This is your thesis.
I don't even think he's here, but I really enjoyed economics with Mr. McDuffie. And this year, apologetics with Mr. Acuff has been very helpful, I think. And we've had like very good discourses in the class. And then also government with Mrs. Gomez last semester. I think we had some really good discussions that forced me to like change the way I thought about things, or think deeper to find. I mean, maybe it was to prove someone wrong, and I needed a better reason, but it helped to secure my beliefs about what was right, and then maybe change what I thought about that might have been wrong.
Good. That's interesting. I think it's always good to kind of ask that question or something like that, just to kind of take a glance back at, this is how far you've come, this is what you've come through, and this is the final product, so to speak. All right, so we are about out of time. It's your chance to ask us the hard-hitting questions.
Okay, so Mr. Bowden, out of all of the dance moves in the history of creation, what is your favorite dance move? I can give you all y'all's questions and then go back. Okay, Mrs. Westfall. Does it make you happy to watch all the sophomores suffer through physics? And Mr. Patterson.
Seems like it.
Out of every band ever, who do you think is the greatest of all time and why?
Okay, so pretty much only my dance students will understand what I'm talking about on this one. But probably my favorite is probably the most simple as well, the smooth move. Because y'all know. It gets you from one hand position to another, and it, just like the name implies, looks really smooth. And guys built like me are not smooth very often, so I do appreciate that move. Yeah.
All right. I hate that you use the word suffer. Does it make me happy to see the sophomores suffer through physics every year? No, I don't think so. It makes me happy to see them work hard and to strive and to grow. And I was just telling Mr. Priya today about I really love seeing 14 to 16-year-olds as they grow up and they struggle. They learn to work hard or not work hard and learn. And so I just like being a part of their lives at this age.
I thought for sure Mr. Bowden was going to say the gritty was his favorite dance move of all times.
Do you know? Could you show us? Could you show us all what that looks like?
No, I cannot, but thanks for asking. He's the dance teacher. All right, so my favorite band. Okay, so any genre?
Any genre.
Or not my favorite band, but the greatest band of all time. Well, they're kind of the same thing. So I think it's important to really understand that for a musician, for a music artist or whatever to be considered great, it has to have staying power. I don't think that you can really qualify anybody that's currently getting started because they haven't been around long enough to know if they're going to last or not.
I mean, Kanye's lasted a long time.
Sure. Remember, I said the word musician. So
Right.
Yeah.
He's the voice of our generation.
That's it. That's right. So I think you could look at the Beatles, right? The Beatles they were a great example of it. They've been around for a very long time, very popular. You could look at the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones have also had hits in performances in 6 decades, maybe, because you said I was old, but they are old. You could also look at somebody like Stevie Ray Vaughan. You could go through all sorts of different things. My personal favorite is to go through the hair bands of the 80s, because obviously that's what I looked at, right? So me personally, I think the greatest is Van Halen. And the reason I do is because they survived what in the 80s would have been really considered a death sentence when the lead singer decided to get arrogant and cocky and go off on his own, David Lee Roth. That didn't work out too well for him. And Van Halen just continued. They brought Sammy Hagar in, and they just continued to pump out great music. And so my answer would be Van Halen. Some people might look at those others, but there you go.
Okay. No further questions.
Are you sure? Mm-hmm. All right, Kayson, you did a great job. Let's pray and we'll get out of here. Father, we just thank you for just Kayson and just his heart. God, I appreciate so much just the level of care that he shows for the people around this place. I just thank you for that. I ask you to help him to continue to pursue that as he pursues you in his relationships. God, I pray that all of us can walk out thinking about our relationships with each other, the influence that we have on each other horizontally as well as vertically in our lives, God. Thank you for this time and this place to be able to discuss these things so we can leave better than we were when we came in. It's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen.
I looked at Dave in the seat and I just started laughing, bro. Only 6 years, that's a lot to talk about